Commissioner Warren,
Here.
Commissioner Sept,
Here.
Commissioner Henning,
Here.
Commissioner Jarvis, Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Schneider,
Here.
Chairman Ryan.
Here. We always start our meeting with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Anyone to lead us in prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us together this morning as a free people to discuss the business of Lapeer County. And as we do, we're very mindful of the blessing and the responsibility that comes with that freedom. Please help us to be always mindful of it and cherish it. Lord, we ask for a blessing upon Lapeer County, especially all those within our community that are suffering in any way. Please be there for assistance and please help us to know how we can assist. Lord, we ask for a blessing upon our staff and especially those, again, that put themselves in harm's way for us, for all those in the medical community, for all of the educators that are getting prepared to educate our children. Lord, we ask you to please bless our troops, especially those that are away from their families in foreign lands. And Lord, as we prepare to conduct the business of the county this morning, give us the wisdom necessary to make the best decisions that we can. And we ask all this in your holy name.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before the board, that's today's agenda. I need a motion to approve this. Quentin kind of cleaned up, this is already in the packet, but he put this on here, he cleaned it up for us. Is there anything else you want on this agenda?
No, sir.
Make the motion. We have a motion. Support to approve this agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Draft minutes from the August 19th, 2021 committee of the whole meeting. I need a motion to approve that minutes.
Motion moved.
Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review the overnight travel requests and budget amendments going around the dais this morning. If you see anything in there you don't agree with, please bring it before the board this morning. Department head updates. Would any department heads like to give us an update this morning? Here to see one, I'll close department updates, public time. Would like to address this board during the first public time.
Yes, there was just a couple of things. At the last meeting, with all due respect to the chairman, because I do respect him, but at the end, there were a couple of comments that I felt like those of us in the, that are here, that come to the meetings and speak to you openly and speak to you respectfully about what we think in our county. But I felt reprimanded about those folks who are calling and threatening the health department or whoever else are getting threatening calls. And I just felt like, those of us here have been so respectful, and I felt like you were speaking to us, and I take offense to that just because I would never do that. And this week I read something that a nurse had written, and I am not a nurse. I did not get that calling. I'm so thankful for nurses and doctors that picked up that phone call and took it. But there were 10 rights that they're taught in nursing school. And the last right, it's the right of medication or services given. And it's like the right time, the right patient, the right dose, the right situation. And the last one is the right to refuse. The patient has the right to refuse. You don't need, you're not in pain? Okay, great, then you don't need this payment. So that's the last one. And I like, most patients need to know those rights, those 10 rights that ought to be taught to everyone. And then I guess the last thing is, there was just something said about surveillance cameras, that we need more surveillance cameras around this county. We don't need more surveillance cameras. You know, there are people doing bad things, but we don't need that. That's what the left says. And that's not, I stand on the right side. Thank you.
Anybody else like to address this board during the first public time? Kurt?
Yeah, I passed out some literature before you guys walked in the door. And the basic thing about that is the graphene oxide that's present in these vaccines. It's a toxin. The young lady submitted a petition, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, wanting to have the county enact an ordinance concerning roving bands of vaccinators going to people's doors. And, well, I coincided it. I was in Almine at the time. And I wonder what happened to it. Like me, perhaps later, I could, no.
Would anybody else like to address this board during the first public time? Is there anybody back there who'd like to address us? Hearing and seeing no one, I close the first public time. Bring us down to the first issue, Drain Commission, request to adopt the full faith and credit resolution for the Bell River Intercounty Drainage Project. Joe?
And so I'm requesting that if you could do a full faith and credit for the Bell River drainage. We have a $800,000 cost. We're looking at borrowing $775,000. The county has paid their share, $120,000. We have $655,000, and I have a lady ready to land. I could use your full faith and credit.
Jackie?
Yes,
All right.
yes.
I need a motion from the board.
Motion.
Support for $655,000.
You need us to, any more than that? Okay. We have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys wanted to put it on there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Kind request, who's that? Purchase services for the Kind School, the career program for the 2021.
Good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl.
Good to see all of you. Yes, I'm here again for the high school, junior high program. We go into the junior high and high school for Elmont Middle School, Elmont City High School and Venture, and they'd like us to come back to the junior high this year and the middle school at Elmont City, and Roland Warner, Zimmer, and the high school, Lapeer High School. We go in 5 hours a week trying to keep kids to stay in school. It's a great program. It's working really well. A couple really cool things. One, kind of on a side note, Kind has taken over Citizen Probation Council, so that's back up and running. It's a really good fit. I don't have, because the past prosecutor didn't use it, and we had to leave our office. A lady gave us free office space. She sold the building, so then we didn't have any place, so we dissolved everything. And so Kind's picking that up, which if it works out like the plan, then we'll have some extra funding to be able to use for younger kids that will help prevent them getting into trouble later. So, and the other good thing is, because of the Kind program being in the high school, we have a person that decided to go into social work, and she's going to intern with us this year because of what she's seen us do at high school. So it's kind of a cool thing. We go into the schools. The schools can't say enough good things about us because we are always there to help them. During the pandemic, we were even able to go out to visit the kids at the house And so it worked out really well for them and for us both. We are providing the classes. There's 12 different classes like mindfulness, how to be organized, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, things like that we're doing at Roland Warner. Emily City wants us to do it at both of their schools. I think Zimmer Junior High is going to be doing it this year too. So it's a great program. I have Kelly here. Kelly? She's in the high schools and in the middle schools, and she's going to tell about some of the things that happen. Good morning.
Before you proceed, Kelly, are you?
Ah, great.
Before we proceed with this, is this in addition to your regular program?
Yes, this is a
Is
different
this
program.
new?
It's not new. This has been 3 years that we've had it with the county. Before that, we had it just at North Branch School, and it was a pilot program. And it went so well that we expanded it.
So it's already budgeted.
It's all budgeted.
Okay, that answers that question. Okay, sorry for interrupting.
That's all right. I'd actually like to begin with a really sincere thank you and wish of gratitude to all of you, because this program, I believe in it. It's my job. That's what I do every day. But in the last year, the very first day I walked into the high school, the secretaries got up and came to me. One of them came over and hugged me and said, "We need you more this year, more than ever." And one of the things that I found this year was how grateful all the staff was, now that this will be our 4th year that we're starting to get in. So they know that they have another resource when they've got a kid in trouble or that is just needing a little bit of extra help, they can call us, and they do. So I wanted to just take a minute and read you something out of an article. A lot of information is coming out now. We all know how much the pandemic has affected all the different groups of people, right? It's affected all of us in so many different ways. But teenagers, they are such social people. Their development depends on them being social. And to be blocked from that was very, very stressful to them. So there's a lot of studies now coming out about this. And it says schools provide structure and routine to the lives of students. Following the routine of getting up at a certain time, going to classes at specific times, and coming home at a certain time provides a sense of normalcy in all their lives. This is common sense to us, right? The predictability of knowing that 3rd period math class follows 2nd period history class allows students' brains to focus on academic content. For most students, school isn't just about academics. We know that also. It's also about social interactions, and many friendships are started by sitting next to each other in class. The highlight of a student's day might be walking down a certain hallway between 5th and 6th period, because that's when she can reliably expect to see the person she has a crush on. Groups of friends eat lunch together every day, and through their interactions with teachers and other school personnel, young people learn to interact with non-family authority figures. That's also very key. I'm talking about some other benefits that come from actually being in the school. More importantly, though, participation in these activities is an important part of a student's identity. They provide a tribe of others with whom a common interest and skill is shared. The schools work very hard to be a family for these kids. One of the most stressful aspects of the current situation is not knowing what's coming next. Are we gonna go to school tomorrow? Will so-and-so be there? Will we be able to have that football game? We don't know who has been or will be infected. We don't know when the schools and businesses will reopen. We don't know what the long-term effects of the pandemic will be. Facing so many unknowns heightens anxiety. And I think all of us can say that there is a certain amount of anxiety that we felt from having lived through this pandemic and still facing many issues from it. But the teenagers were really hit hard. And I'll be starting my 15th year here at Heim. And in all the years, anybody who knows me, some of you do, I'm chatty. I'm a talker, right? Just a little bit. And honest to goodness, most of my time over this last year, I just sat there and listened to kids. It was a different job this last year. I wasn't out doing as many things with them. I was really just sitting across, bearing witness to these kids that needed to get this out, all these thoughts and feelings of this. And I had several kids tell me, I feel a little bit better just having somebody to talk to about it. So I and probably you don't need any of these studies to tell us how this impacted our kids. But what I can tell you is when their basic needs are not being met, we can't expect them to be successful in school. Another thing to consider is I had a lot of kids this past year who were straight A, high accomplishing students. They're used to a different kind of stress. The kids that we call our frequent flyers didn't see them as much because they're used to having to deal with all kinds of things. So it was a whole new toolbox that these kids needed. They weren't just stressed out about getting an A in their physics class. They were stressed out about all these other things and didn't really have the skills that they needed. One of the biggest things I saw, every single kid, they're not sleeping. The stress is impacting their sleeping. That's a basic need, right? You have to be able to get a good night's rest to be successful in school the next day. So we worked with a lot of kids on teaching just some basic stress relief things to help them improve their academics. So this year was a little bit different. There weren't so many individual stories for me because it really felt all the same. These kids just needed somebody to offer them some assistance in how to deal with the stress that they've never felt before. So thanks again, and I'm hopeful that you can continue to support us.
And if you remember, KIND started on the prospect of the Hawaiian study, which they followed at-risk kids for 30 years. And the kids that were really successful always had somebody that paid attention to them. It was hardly ever a teacher, usually a coach or a Boy Scout leader, Girl Scout leader, something like that, Sunday school teacher that paid attention to them and really cared about just them. And so that's kind of what we do. We go in and we work one-on-one with kids, adults or teenagers, and it works out. Remember 2 years ago, or not last year, year before, we had a girl that finally told us that her brother was raping her, and another girl that she'd been gang raped in her school before that, and nobody had known that. We did get the girl, we called the cops, we did everything right, and then the girl came back and said, yeah, mom yelled at me for telling that her brother was raping her. So, it's a tough job, but we have great caseworkers, we go into schools, we do amazing things, and it's not me, it's the caseworkers that do the amazing things. It works out really well, and it's, if we can keep one kid in school and help them graduate and keep them off welfare, it's more than probably this home.
I make the motion to move.
So any other questions for Cheryl?
I have some, Cheryl. Obviously, this is new to me. Can you give me a description of, when you say that it's 5 hours a week in each school?
In each school.
Okay, so how many hours are we talking about total?
Would be, yeah, it depends on if it's six times 5 times 36.
It could be.
What, yeah, I'm pretty sure they are,
1,080.
1,080.
And this is a match.
It's not actually a match, it's part of the money. We usually get money from United Way, the schools pay money in kind.
The way I read this, it's a match. So I would assume the schools are chipping in.
The schools, they sign a contract, and that depends on how much money I can find in other grants and other areas of what they have to pay. But if nobody paid, they'd be responsible for the whole amount, which is like, wish I brought the contracts with me. I can get those figures for you.
How much do we contribute to that?
It's 48 times, 5 times 36.
What was the amount we contributed last time?
Okay.
But I'm bummed.
How much did we contribute?
18,000. 8,600. So 86 times 6.
I'm on it.
Should have brought my phone.
86 times 6 is 516.
And that's 516.
51,000 probably, 600. It's a total program.
Okay. So what does that break down to per hour?
$48 an hour is what our fee is. Usually we charge 35, and the rest is in kind with kind. It's hard to explain. It's $48 a normal fee. That's what it used to cost us. I've got the cost down, so now it's 35, but we still use the 48 for grants and things like that. And then we do an in kind with kind.
I guess I personally would like to see way more information on this as far as, for this money, what are we guaranteed? You're gonna be in these 6 schools or?
There's
these
6
5
schools, 5 hours a week for the full school year.
Okay. And then those schools are chipping in from 0 to whatever.
I think 22,000.
So,
The one thing is, I called all the superintendents and, they said, send the contract over, we'll sign it. They didn't even want to talk about it. The program's great. And we will.
and what measuring tool do we have to show that this is actually working?
We don't have a measuring tool per se, other than what the teachers tell us and what the kids tell us.
And the counselors and the
The counselors
secretaries
and
and
the
the lunch
secretaries.
ladies.
Well,
Parents.
and I guess that's to my point. I mean, this is overlapping services with several other groups, I assume, right? I mean,
I don't know
The
if
counsel-
overlapping is,
the counselors at the school,
Right, the counselors are the ones that send us the
They're-
kids.
they're the ones that are paid to do this job. You know,
Not really.
it's a little bit different, and one of the ways that it's different, I can understand why that is a little bit confusing, but one of the ways it's different is I often have a counselor call me and say, can you help me with this kid? Because counselors aren't going out into the community. Counselors aren't, if they discover that the problem is actually in the home, which so many times it is, counselors aren't going to the home. Counselors aren't helping the parents make the connections with the community services that we have so that the child's home life can be better. And that's something that we often do. We'll get a kid that we're talking to at school and find out that parents are recently divorced. Mom, for the first time, is trying to figure out how to do all these different things. I'll go to the home and help work with mom as well, if that's what's needed. So the counselors really like it in all of our programs. All of the school people enjoy the fact that we can help not only go into the home, but also with that homeschool connection, which is so important. A lot of them don't have that, and we can help bring the parent into the school, make those connections, make it a little bit less scary for them, and then they go on to, for years, to have a successful relationship with a family they might not have before. So there are some differences definitely in what the council, not to mention how overwhelmed.
We're kind of a helpmate for the counselors.
because I mean, and I understand, just like the liaison officers in the schools and whatever, and, your story earlier about the girl being sexually abused, a lot of that stuff gets brought out by liaison officers, which typically, at least in the communities that I've seen, they keep the liaison officer the same that community
Yeah.
for a long time, so they have that relationship.
But how many junior high girls can go to that deputy and say that her brother's right there?
It's such a good point though, because that's another relationship where I've had kids where I can bring them, like in the high school with AJ. You know, we have a good working relationship. And if I have a child that might be afraid to do something like that, and I don't think it was last year, I think it was the year before I did that. I had a girl that was way too scary for her. And I walked in with her and sat down, and then he follows through and checks on her, because he's in the building all the time. 5 hours a week at a school
Well, yeah,
is not very
exactly.
much.
That was my other concern is 5 hours a week in a school, in one school. You're not gonna get to know those students very well at all. You know.
You'd be
You'd be
surprised.
amazed.
Because,
Really,
you know, another major form of communication with kids is what? Texting, right? That's another thing that I personally, and I know Chelsea does too, I think all of us do. We offer that for these kids. So there's a lot of out-of-school contact in addition. That can be real supportive. You know, you've got a kid, and we work with these other agencies. When you talked about some crossover, you know, all of the gals from truancy, we work together with all of them. We talk to each other about, okay, have you checked on this kid? Truancy and delinquency will oftentimes go into a child that's been flagged and say, this is an iffy case, let's try kind first.
I respond to his thing because, and I understand where he's coming from, but what's going on now is that they're getting closer to the student because the counselors have brought in, those who do know the kids in the school, brought it to their attention, so we narrowed it down to just them. So that's what helped them, improve them to get there faster. So I understand your concerns there, but this thing has worked in the past, and I have to agree right now today, and we've talked about it before, we talked about it last week, the tensions in this whole country right now are so high. You think you have problems. These kids, it's like, and you ask any kid, if you take a 8-year-old or even a 15-year-old, to them, time is forever. If you talk to somebody 60 years old, it's like, you know, we're planning retirement, we're getting closer to the end. So we're thinking differently, things go faster.
The other
To
thing,
them, it's forever, so, but they are petrified right now. So
it's
I
an
think
average of 5
Brian,
hours.
this program that, you know, you're brand new, so you get used to these different kinds of programs and how they all link together. But this program has been, for example, very successful. North Branch schools and other schools, I mean, the schools in my district. So I talk to those, not necessarily talk to ones in your district, but talk to those in mine. This program worked very, very well. And there's a lot of students that get lost in the system that the system doesn't take care of. And what Cheryl McKine finds out is that a lot of the problems are not with the child as much as they are with the parents in the home.
I
So,
completely understand that. And-
yeah, so
I think
I
And I guess what I'm asking for though is, you know, you're telling me it's 5 hours a day, you know, or 5 hours a week in a school, but then you're talking about, you know, you're contacting these kids by text, you're going out to the home, all that sort of stuff. Where is all that information?
I'm sorry,
It's files.
usually I bring a whole packet, and I just thought you guys had probably knew all about it.
A
I
couple
didn't
of
think
people,
about,
that's
you know.
a new one.
I would like to have you come out someday and I'll show you all of our
Yeah.
programs. We do
Yeah.
several programs there. And it's 5 hours a week is what we bill, but sometimes it's 8 hours this week and 3 hours next week. Like Thanksgiving week or test weeks, they don't want us there. So it's not like it's 5 hours a week and we stick to it. It's a lot of times 8 or 10. And then, you know, when they're testing or, you know, holidays, we don't go in. So it's an average.
I do want to mention one other thing. I really believe that that all of us work well collaboratively, all of us meaning all of the other agencies that help kids. The school, the courthouse, the CMH, all of the agencies work well together. All of us who are out there in the field work well together. We let each other know at what level of help is needed. You know, I might get a case where I think, oh, this is way more serious than what I need, but I'm gonna take them so that they're getting what they need. I may have only spent a half an hour helping that particular child, but I could have had a huge impact on that family because I was able to lead them to CMH and then they were able to get the counseling that they need. That's just sort of an example of that.
We had one child that wanted counseling and his parents couldn't get him there. And so we took him to counseling and the mom was so thankful and CMA really helped that family out a lot.
Brendan?
All I would add is I would actually recommend Cheryl that when I actually first started on the commission, I think me and Cheryl sat down for like an hour and a half in her office down in the basement. And just talked about it and she showed the program, but it is kind of complex how the funding system works.
It is very
Much like every education system, it's just complex and complicated to the max. And their work is really important, and the reason why, as someone who used to be on the school board, I can tell you, counselors are more or less academic advisors now. Their actual work with students is very limited, and it's getting more and more with more and more regulations and requirements coming down from the state. They're losing that touch more and more, which is unfortunate. And what the schools have done to react is they hire social workers, which is great, except where the social workers almost always work at. They work in the elementary level. What about the high school? What about the junior high? And that's where, these guys can come in and make that really important difference. And while some of the evidence is probably anecdotal versus, data driven, I think in a situation where you're dealing with emotions and mental health, I think it's just as important to have those students say, hey, you guys helped us, some things can't show up in a chart. So yeah, I just recommend, going down and talking for, an hour and a half and getting that grasp of things.
Yeah, I guess we do several programs.
You want to speak now?
I just wanted to add in, KIND was really something created locally by a lot of the organizations, including education, that were working with kids.
It was a county program to start with.
Because they saw kids were falling through the gaps, and the net result was that instead of dealing with the problems earlier on when they were small, they were ending up in the judicial system, probate, juvenile. And then sometimes they were getting shipped to these homes. We talked about what happens with the child care fund. So KIND was created to work at the beginning and intermediate level to try to keep them out of the end level.
It was a county program, and then we went to nonprofit hoping to receive more grants.
So who else speak? Lenny, you want to speak?
I'll address one of the things I wanted to address, which we talked before, the past budgetarily, especially right now while we're entering the budget process. And all the things that we're mandated to do, and that leaves very little discretionary money left over. We talked about the fact that we try to keep our road patrol with the sheriff's department, even though that's not a statutory or constitutional mandated service. We recognize the importance of that in the community. And it's the same thing with programs like KIND. That's not a mandatory service, but the child care fund is. And we've always talked about historically, that one is such a huge expenditure of money compared to if we invest in proactive programs. And we've always used this one as an example. Even if we did it for no other reason, even if we didn't have any altruistic reasons, and the only reason we did it was budgetarily, it just makes sense to invest in the early end with small dollars rather than having to pay at the big end when you end up dealing with all these delinquency and dependency issues. And then the other comment that a lot of board members of Cheryl will appreciate is I personally enjoyed math questions because those were the same questions, type of questions that Cheryl used to always ask. And she, unlike our controller having a calculator in front of her, she always had one of those old-fashioned number things with a ticker tape. And she would ask those questions to people all the time and be doing her calculations, so it was so fun to watch her on the other side of the table. Thank you for that, Brian.
And I do want to add on, I can't remember what I wanted to add.
Well, you could add on it, Lapeer County had one of the first programs.
Oh, but this is the only program like it in the state. And
It's the only one.
when I first became a county commissioner, our child care budget was going up $100,000 every year. We're like, we can't afford this, like 3 years in a row, $100,000 every year. And so we got together and tried to look at what else we could do, and that's when we created all the prevention programs. And Judge Price said, if we get these kids in elementary before they got to high school, or before they got to probate court, it'd be better for everybody, and that's when we started KIND. But 3 years after we started this, our childcare budget went up $8,000. From 100,000 to 8,000. So the prevention programs work financially very well for the county. And you talk to any other county and they're like, oh my gosh, I wish we had these programs that you guys have.
One of the greatest joys of my job now that I'm looking at starting 15 years is having young people that are married and have children and doing things that come back to me and say, oh, what you did for me when I was in 8th grade changed the whole, and it's amazing to me because sometimes it's just a small amount of time on our part, but it was somebody that sat and listened to, like Cheryl said, the success of the direct one-on-one relationship that we built with these kids. And I have lots of them that come back to me after.
Well, Chelsea was supposed to be here today, but she's sick. And she started out, she was in high school and she wasn't gonna go to college. And we got her to go to college. She graduated, she came to work for us. We got her involved with Mission Works. She came and worked for us. And she's been there, I don't know how many years, she's got 3 kids, but she was a kind kid.
And she's an amazing worker.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
She's all the cases. I mean, Kelly and Chelsea and Crystal, they do amazing things. Just
Is there any other questions for Cheryl? It's nice to see you walking again.
I know it.
You feel a lot better?
I do. Yes, yeah. So,
Yeah, you were quite a problem for a while. A lot of pain, weren't you?
I did. Until I got my hip replaced, I couldn't walk.
I understand.
Walk like that.
I watched you.
So, no, I'm back.
Move the draft motion, you need a second. You don't have one.
I'll second. Okay, sorry.
Well, we have a motion and support. All in favor of the motion, so say aye.
Aye.
All same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very
It is a
much.
great program. And Brian, give me a call. I'll sit down and you'll be amazed at all the things you do.
Okay, make sure.
Number 5. Where's that? Request to replace security cameras due to the recent lightning strike there.
Bring recording order, sir. So as you guys know, my life was told you all about that months ago. So Technical Advisory Committee and 911 Authority Board went over several camera options. The one we presented today was some alarm systems. They're well known to the county, they've done work here before, and it was thought that they provided or quoted a better system than the other two, one by price and the other one by equipment. So that's our request today, is not to exceed $7,500 to go with them alarm systems and replace our entire camera system.
I make the motion with that one.
I have a question for you. So it says in here that you're filing an insurance claim.
I couldn't,
It says that you're filing an insurance
we're
claim.
going to file it, yes, with MMRMA. See if we can recoup the funds that we gotta pay out ahead of time.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, it happened several months ago. Is there a reason that the insurance company hasn't?
We haven't filed it yet. We're working with Building and Grounds and the administrator to file that paperwork.
Okay.
We gotta put it in, we gotta buy it, put it in, and file the claim, and then get the money back.
You get used to how that works.
Not old school.
So,
And I'll point out, kind of the discussion we had before with a lot of the ARPA motions coming out of, the RFA is done very well, even though it's concise, it explains the bidding process. I know that this was not the lowest bid, it explains the justifications for why the authority board, technical committee, the authority board are recommending this particular one. So that's all of the important information that's needed. If anybody ever looks at a motion and questions a motion, that's a public record that explains that's a record.
I have one other question for Quentin.
Yes.
Is this something that we could pay for with the ARPA money? And if so, are we better off going through the ARP committee, making a recommendation, and then getting board approval?
I do believe security surveillance falls under those categories. And it definitely falls under public safety. There's no doubt about that, being 911. I mean, that's a clear distinction in public safety, so it definitely falls into that bucket. I can clarify and make sure that, that's a green light, but
Does it matter where we approve it first as far as board level?
it all depends if we're actively pursuing a reimbursement. If MMRMA, have they been contacted?
Yeah, you've got the paperwork for me, and I just gotta send it back to you.
So MMRMA has been contacted, so probably a claim in system. So if the ball's already rolling and they're just waiting for a reimbursement, I would think just run its course because we're going to have it done in its entirety. And then that's one less reporting function on finance to have to report to ARP.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Well, any other questions?
I second
We got a motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All same sign, motion carries. Thank you. Front of the court, request authorization accepting the access and visitation contract, First Amendment, for year 2021, that adds $5,000 to the existing grant.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, how are you this morning?
Good yourself?
Fine.
Here before you, request authorization to approve the amendment. It would expand the contract from the original $1,000 to $6,000. Main conditions on our end is that we provide services, or that the access visitation service providers provide those services. This is a program that permits non-custodial parents an opportunity to have parent time with their kids at no expenses. Beneficial program from our perspective because it permits both parents to have participation in their kids' lives while providing assurances, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's domestic violence, whatever issues that prevents them from exercising their parent time non-supervised. This is money that we can utilize that doesn't have any expense to them.
So another program under the KIND.
KIND is our only provider of this program, yes.
Just a technical thing on the request for action. State percentage says not to exceed 10,000. Is that 10,000 or 1,000? Because currently you're getting 5 and this adds 1.
The increase would be up to $6,000, would be my understanding. I'm afraid I do not know where that $10,000 figure came from. I don't know if it was a carryover from a previous request for action. I apologize. I don't know where that figure came from.
It's very technical. I don't think it matters.
I might add, we got $10,000 a couple of years ago, so that's probably where that came from. The other thing I'd like to say is Genesee County is looking at maybe putting in the grant for services and using KIND because they don't have anybody to use that program, and we're getting a lot of clients from Genesee County. So if we get their money to help our program, that's good.
It all sounds good.
It's one of the few programs in the area, it's certainly the only one in the county.
Sure.
Some of these parents, that's the only way that they would have access to their kids. So from our perspective, it's win-win.
Another topic for Brian's talk with Cheryl. Very complicated arrangement.
Somebody made a move, so I'll make the motion.
We got a motion and support for this. Support. Got a motion and support. All in favor, so say aye.
Aye.
All same sign, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be in front of the full board next week then?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Winning Mental Health, request approval for a one-time payment of $116,435 into the MERS fund at no additional cost to the county.
I'll move it, that RFA is very self-explanatory.
I'm here for questions.
Is this, when you move this $116,000 MERS, some of the reasoning, some of the things we're gonna have to look at in 2 weeks? Or are you just funding this?
we're just funding, we're funding our underfunded amount in MERS. So, UHY on our annual audit, we give them the report that we get from, the county gets from MERS, and they look at what's the underfunded amount. And you'll notice in some of the documentation, there's a worksheet from 2019. That's the year that we switched from an actuarial basis for our contributions to a market value basis. You can see in the paragraph in the notes below that the auditor feels that the market value with a 5-year smoothing is a more accurate assessment of what the value of the funds are. So in 19, actuarial assessment said we were 450,000 overfunded. Market value said we were 683 underfunded. So we switched to the market value valuation and contributed the 683 in 2019. Once we made that move, any future contributions in excess of our normal contributions have to be based on market value, not actuarial value. So this year, the market value estimate is $116,000. Well, it is $116,000 underfunded based on the report from MERS this year.
That's for that. Any other questions for
Maybe related, Jackie, are we using the same method of evaluation or different?
I'm not sure, but looking at this, that was a question I had for, with Scott Hoskins. That I'm gonna have with him today, probably.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good question to have.
Yeah.
Well, this will have to go next week to the full board, so we should contact our accountant.
Yeah.
And we'll,
I was thinking even for budget times.
Yeah, our account is your account.
Yeah, I see that Paul said,
same guy.
Paul Bailey's the one that did the evaluation for us, so.
Yeah, he didn't do one.
I'll second that. I'll take a second.
Good, so seconded, motion and support. A motion support, all in favor, say aye. Aye. With the same sign, motion carries. Thank you, Lord. Proposed motion from ARPA committee from August 26th. This is the one to actually move forward with the RFP for upgrading the county's website in order to provide an improvised user-friendly site. Offer more online services to the public.
I just want to say, I was super thrilled to see this, because quite frankly, our website is atrocious when it comes to user friendliness. And counties with half our size have websites twice as good as ours. So I'm very happy this is taking place. I just want to throw that out there.
So that's a second.
That's a second, yes.
Okay, for any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Proposed motion from Properties Committee. Brian, August 26th.
So, I'd like to make a motion to recommend committee of the whole for the authorized E911 to tie into Village of Columbiaville's generator and the water tower paging site. We have a generator currently out there for 911's paging equipment, and it's plenty big enough to tie into Columbia Village water tower. It's no cost to the county or 911. To do such, Columbia Village is going to be paying for all that, and then they will pay 40% of the maintenance and fuel for the generator.
Is that part of it contractual, is that a contractual arrangement?
Yes.
At some point, they must see that contract payments, or is that? Because it's normally it's 911, but if it is county equipment, at some point, if it's a contract, the chairman has to sign or something, we should normally put through. Assume you'd see that.
Contracts included in all that.
So does the motion have to say that authorize the chairman to enter into approve that contract? Because that was a part of the motion, so that was my only question.
Yeah, I submitted.
That revenue stuff is not part of the motion. It's not-
You can just add it into the motion. The chairman has to sign.
So added.
Okay.
Should we also add, have no cost to county?
Right, there's no cost.
So we've got that motion, no cost to county. I know it, and no additional cost.
Guys all square on that?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion and support.
Who is the
With
support?
those additions. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. Request to amend the financial goals, policies, practices policies.
I'll move it.
Support.
That's to revise from.
Revise.
Joella, with
I got some discussion. I voted to move this on, but I'm not totally comfortable with it. So I wanted at least to have a little discussion. I think we talked about how bidders, prospective bidders, companies that would want to bid on things would find out that they were even available if there isn't a formal bid process. So I guess I'd ask our county administrator to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so we want to make sure that all of our local contractors, regional contractors, anybody that want to bid on a project is notified. So how do we currently do that? We put that in the paper. We may put that online. We send an email blast out to all the contractors within our database. We're trying to spread the word out because we want as much impact, and response as possible. None of that changes. So in the spirit of transparency, no matter at what level we're talking about here for the proposed changes, we're still going to post it online. We're still going to use email. We're still going to put it in the paper. We're still going to send it out to our networks of contractors. I have to say, Chairman Roy and I had a conversation earlier in the week, and I got to admit, he had a great idea. He had a lot of good ideas, but this one was really good.
once in a while.
I'll be looking for it.
No, it was a solid idea.
Digging that hole there.
I know, man. I'm glad I'm not using building ground shovels, man. I know. Okay. So this was the idea, and it is a solid one. We know that labor right now to go out and say we need roofs, and then we're going to go attract ourselves 2 roofers, right? But in the same time, we may need a carpenter, and while we uncover the project, we may need a plumber all at the same time. So to coordinate all those trades, a project management, right? That's what it is. Trying to coordinate all these skilled trades all at the same time. So the idea of advertising as a whole, put a call out to all contractors in the skilled trades, listed by the potential projects that we foresee coming in the future. Not that they're on the docket right now to be approved and move forward, but to put a call out to carpenters, all the skilled trades, the plumbers, HVAC technicians, right? Excavators, operators, millwrights, what have you. Put that out there, and we start proactively gathering those contacts. Names of company, gross sales, can they perform the work, number of employees, primary contact information. And then as we gather that, it puts them on the notice that we are going to be doing projects. And then as soon as a project comes along that fits to their skilled trade, then we know a direct source to get them out to them. So we're not leaving contractors behind, right? I think it's a fantastic idea in that instead of put the project and then go chase the labor, let's gather the labor. Let's get the labor together, right? A concise directory of go-tos, right? And so in future projects, when we have throwing it out there, we have a $60,000 project that's being quoted for, right? We don't want to miss somebody locally because they didn't hear it in the paper, they didn't read it in the paper, they didn't see it online. We ourselves are going to reach out to our directory to those who responded to that advertisement. So we hit transparency, we create the directory, we work locally, and then out to make sure all of our skilled trades people have an opportunity to bid on this work.
That's a great idea, and it's not new, it's new here, obviously, but back in the eighties, I was in floor cover myself, so I understand what you're saying. I used to call on townships and counties, and they had a list always there, so we always got the names of what's needed to be bid on and go after. So I'd go hunt out bids. If you got a business, that's what you're trying to do, is find out who's in need. So I would go find those lists from those townships, so that's a great idea, that we would have that posted even online for them to check out.
Exactly right.
There's other ways to broadcast this. You know how we broadcast certain, somebody's running for an office, not a county commissioner, but a larger office, how they actually go out and find a company to actually, because they have all the data and everything else they need to know on certain areas. And we actually do the same thing like through the papers. We can broadcast that to everybody in the county. So everybody knows what we're looking for. We can gather all this information and put it in data.
Now, this is an idea. We know when this might be actually done.
As soon as you decide you want to do it, so we can put it together in our.
No, that actually, and the cost to do those types of advertisement and outreach is minimal cost. It's built into our advertising budgets. We have marketing money set aside. This is not a prolonged process. We will immediately create the ad, contact the papers, and get it out. Announcements on all of our channels that we do digitally, including our website. All that's quick. I'm not worried about timing.
So you're saying the staff will begin to do this?
Yes.
We have staff.
Yes.
Actually, the newspapers and a lot of these people that participate in this and make money off of this will actually do a lot of that creative writing for us if you really want to use it.
Correct.
That certainly sounds like it meets my concerns about accountability in a sense, or awareness on the part of small businesses or larger businesses about what we're planning and what we're actually looking for.
Does everybody know what we're doing? Brendan?
Yeah, well, he's not concerned, but now I'm very concerned. Just kidding. So, I actually just had a quick question.
Sure.
When I see a number like $99,999.99,
right,
I always assume it's not arbitrary and we're up against some sort of requirement somewhere. If it's over 100,000, is that a safe assumption, or is that just so you guys can better separate?
It was really just a line in the sand. Okay. Because believe it or not, we've had quotes that came in before, and they had, let's just say our limit was 99,000, and it's literally falls in between 99,000 and 100,000. Somebody has to guess. Well, what procedure do we follow? I just told Doreen, run it right up against to the penny, so there's absolutely no question, so we don't have to split the hair later down the road.
Okay, so it is sort of arbitrary. It is sort of an arbitrary number, but used for record keeping.
Exactly right. So I know what bucket and what policy to follow.
All right, that makes sense. That's all.
Yep, no problem. Yes, sir.
A couple other questions. Do we know what other counties are doing? Is this similar to policies that other counties have adopted?
We have no idea what other counties are doing.
I will be. I'll be honest. If I can be honest about this, we're behind the times.
Yeah.
So other counties have higher limits already.
Absolutely.
I can tell you how far behind we are. I was going after this stuff back in the eighties. So you're now just bringing that to the forefront for the county. I'm surprised we don't have that already.
Yeah. It was our limits are low, and we just need to be more competitive. And if I'm just being very blunt, that the labor market is so tight right now, and quotes are only good for 30 days, 45 at max, 45 days, that our process alone, based on these numbers for larger projects, they would have to re-quote the job, because by the time that we finally can get around to an authority to act, that quote's no good. By raising the limit, we can expedite the process and move faster.
Now that's the current environment. And we're talking about any project, whether it's an ARP project or just a regular.
This is across the board.
And we know the economic situation right now with prices is a little bit unusual. Is this anything that we're going to review periodically to see if, one, how it's working, and two, whether it's needed?
Isn't that the policies and procedures? And the chairman's position, shouldn't he be reviewing those?
Well, these are financial. That's why I'm asking these questions.
But I would put it this way, okay? We don't see a change. We don't see a change in our policy until we have an expense beyond $15,000. Okay? Anything over $15,000 requires some type of review, right? Whether it's an informal bid, a formal bid, or a formal sealed bid, right? All I did was I just said, instead of having to write a formal RFP, and if you've ever had to see a formal RFP be written right, it's a 30-page document with a 2-page description of the project, right? I want all that fluff to go away. I want to eliminate the fluff so we can get down to business, and that allows it. Business.
Greater speed.
Yeah, correct. But the decision-making process doesn't change. You still has to come before this board. You still have to say green light, go. But I just want to get us there quicker. That's all.
Are you suggesting concern about the, because things are inflated right now, are you concerned that things are going to deflate in the near future? Is that kind of, I mean,
I don't know, but when we make changes, substantial changes, it makes me wonder, whether we want to do them permanently or do it temporarily.
This change probably should have been made a long time ago.
Let's put it this way, now,
I
the
think
board
that's
has
what-
the authority to always change anything, anytime we want. So if you have a concern in the future, you can always bring it up.
We should have had limits like this a long time
the dollar starts going up
ago. Sure.
like mad, we can make that change and lower those limits.
Yeah, we can't do like what the breakfast food people are doing, Take a 24-ounce box and make it 8. Charge the same.
My final comment on this was, and I can applaud the commissioners for doing that. We were I was 2 months on the job. We came out of a properties committee meeting, and we realized that the spending limit per department was woefully low, and it hurt them in their ability to make purchases. We increased that limit, and not one department has abused it. Not one. And they've all respected the new limit. We'll communicate this new policy properly. We'll communicate out to everybody about the policy. And at the end of the day, commissioners retain the authority to say yes or no. And anything that comes over 15,000 has to go through building and grounds anyway. And we meet on a daily basis. So I feel very confident that this is a policy that will not only increase speed, but will be respected by those who have to operate within these limits.
I guess I would request our chief financial officer to plan in about a year to review this with us. My final.
Okay.
So we have a motion to support to approve this? We've really done it with questions and things. We have a motion to support. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Budget amendments and or appropriation transfers. Don't think we have it. Moving on, budget updates, ongoing through adoption in October. Set date for budget hearings week of September 13th, 17th. Are there any changes? No changes in anything, but.
No. Jackie, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
No
So
change.
just holding the 13th.
And I had a question too on, so you're gonna be doing a survey after we get everything together. We talked anything about those surveys? I haven't heard anything more about that sort of stuff on what we're doing with this ARP money and getting.
Oh, that's it. No, that's a really good point. I'll make October 13th. We're going to have an informational session. It's going to be the registration is being sent out by Doreen. That happened yesterday. She's going to have it posted. We're going to start getting registrations. I'll cut it off in about 4 weeks so we get a number. If it's a small group, we can have it here. If it's a larger group, we may need to kick it up to the community, the community center, just depending on numbers. But a follow-up will be good because I'm going to, the public, if we get a good turnout, they're going to have some questions. And they're going to probably wonder within my township so something afterwards would be something good to put together and have the public respond.
Better numbers.
I would say. Yep.
That's another thing we had to go now to get that, but I understand where you're coming from, so.
Yep.
Down for it.
Yep, that's good.
All I would add to that is we could consider having that meeting in the historic courthouse. Just an idea. I know logistically it might be an issue, but just a thought.
That's good.
I think the
What's
numbers,
seating?
Depends on
again,
the
depending on
numbers.
the numbers, I think it
Yeah.
might be.
Of course, but just a thought.
I've heard a fair amount of interest in it, so I think we have a plan on
Well, we could always use
Center building.
the Senate building or the ambulances. They always allow us to use that big over there for different things.
That's pretty good.
How many does that seat?
It's a big thing. It'd be actually,
That actually
it'd
would
be
be a
used
bad
for a
idea.
lot of big kids. What's that?
That actually would be a bad idea having it out there.
Well, we don't know what kind of participation there's gonna be, because this is just an informational meeting. It's not public input into what we're spending money. This one's.
I'll give numbers back. The last meeting, first meeting in, the last meeting in September. I hope I'll have a hard number for you, and then we'll get it. A 2-week notice should be fine, either for the courthouse, the ambulance building, or the center building. I'll put everybody on notice just to make sure, but those are good ideas.
Who does?
This one, that.
Oh,
How would you like me to post your budget hearing meetings, day and time? Do you want it posted for the whole week, 9 to 4?
yes, we need to post it for the whole week in case we have to use it. Depends on the in-depth. How in-depth we're going in budget hearings.
9 to 4 is good with you?
Yeah, that's fine. Bring us down to the second public time. Would anybody like to address this board during the second public time?
Well, Quentin, since you started it, I'd like to put my 2 cents worth in. One thing on advertising, I was wondering about, I know the federal government, we put out, when I worked for the federal government, that we had contracts coming up, and we would have a website. Could we add that to the county website as well? Here's projected projects that are coming up. Everybody's using computers these days. They're not reading newspapers that much. So I think you people need to address the situation where maybe add that in, where it goes on the county website. Here's projecting jobs. I can go, oh, here's a job over here that the county's gonna do at Parks and Rec. Or here's the job they're gonna do at the courthouse. And this is the types of talents that they need. And they can be ready for that and keep an eye on it. And the same thing as it moves on, that, we're gonna be taking, the applications, for lack of another word, but, they'll be able to submit their bids, at that time. They'd go through the website. Just a thought.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address this board during the second public time?
Hello, Kevin Isaac from Metamora. Good morning. We haven't seen much of our governor lately, haven't heard much from her. I think during the last year's pandemic, we got a period of time there, we had a 75% hospitalization rate in Michigan, and we shut down restaurants at 25% and masked everybody up and had tons of restrictions on businesses and individuals and schools. Right now, according to the statistics, we're up about 71%, and we haven't heard a single word from her. However, like I mentioned last week, I think behind the scenes, she has empowered the health department at the state level, all the way down to local levels, to inflict their reign of terror on citizens, in particular children in school, with face masks. You know, Oakland County, just on the 24th, their last Tuesday, issued, along with a lot of other counties, issued universal mask requirements for all children from grade 12, along with their staff, regardless of evacuation status. a group of parents down there submitted a FOIA request and how to prevent how prevalent Delta variant is in Oakland County. And this is just pertaining to Oakland County because that's all I have right now. And given that that public data, 2 pediatric hospitals in Oakland County, currently 0 deaths under age 20 since the start of the pandemic. Additionally, Oakland County has an over 70% vaccination rate. The FOIA request also revealed since January 1st of this year, the county has only submitted 234 samples for whole genomic sequencing, which is the variant testing. Of those samples, 60, just 26% of that amount, resulted in the Delta variant from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services laboratory where the testing occurs. Of those 60, 3 people were hospitalized, and 9 of that had been diagnosed with this variant were young adults under 18 and children. 0 deaths. But we're going to wrap face cloths around everybody's face in these counties. It's getting out of control. Last week I mentioned that the state and local health departments have been weaponized. Unelected bureaucrats have been empowered to inflict the reign of terror on the free citizens and their communities and our freedoms and our liberties. On 9/11, Andrew Card whispered in George W. Bush's ear that America is under attack. And this day, I think America is under attack. Not by this variant. I think we're under attack by a bunch of unelected bureaucrats and a very zealous, overreaching government controlled by an ideology that is hell-bent on destroying our Constitution and taking away our liberties and our freedoms. I'm really disturbed by some things that I was able to find on the internet. This is posted by several people. One of them is constitutional attorney Catherine Henry. She was the attorney that represented, I can't remember what group it was at, but fought in the U.S. Michigan Supreme Court against the governor on the 1945 Act and won that case. She's very renowned. Also, Garrett Soldano, who's running for governor, had this posted. I just want to read, and this is from several counties, but in particular Bay County, Allegan County, and St. Clair County. And this letter is attention, and this is kind of a form letter that went out to individuals in these particular counties to their parents. And it says that St. Clair County Health Department has certified that Juan has been possibly exposed to the 2019 novel coronavirus. This serves as notification that you are required to cooperate with the St. Clair County Health Department in efforts to prevent or control the transmission of a serious disease or infection. Should any non-compliant behavior, an emergency situation where you become a health threat to others, an immediate court order shall be issued or sought pursuant to Michigan law MCL 333.5207. Under issuance of this court order, you will be taken into protective custody to protect the health of public health. You will be then be afforded an opportunity for a hearing in the court within 72 hours, excluding weekends and holidays, of course. And this is prescribed instructions of this warning. It goes on and on. A representative of the health department shall verify your compliance with this isolation request. I'm appalled by that. I think everybody in the right mind should be that unelected bureaucrats in an organization like the health department in a pandemic with a very infectious disease, but it doesn't get, a child has a better chance of getting struck by lightning than he does getting dying from coronavirus, even the Delta variant. I address you guys today and everybody in the community and all the community leaders here in this room and elsewhere, because you guys play a key role in what happens here in our community. And thank God we're not there yet, but it's happening in other communities. And I'm not saying that it's something that's not going to happen here, and I fear for that. Health threats are going to be, and I've been listening to this and reading about it. Health threats will now be the new foundation to attack our other freedoms of liberty, namely the New Green Deal under the auspices of climate change, gun rights due to gun violence. And you heard it from me today. If you don't believe it, just wait. It's going to happen. It's coming down the road, it worries me greatly. So I just leave with this statement or this quote that I think is very appropriate in this time. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address us during the second public time?
Thank you, Kevin. That was excellent. It's the same thing I've been saying for the last year, only better. He put it better than me. He's a better speaker than I am. Those DVDs that are in each one of your packets describe what's called graphic oxide. It causes, oh geez, where's it? Viral shedding. There's something called, well, the company's called Sinopec. The other one's Shanghai Nanotech over in China. And they're actually used in these Pfizer vaccines. And the others, Moderna, whatever names, can put little things in your body. But things have already come up. Myocarditis in kids from getting these death jabs, clot shots, whatever you want. A young lady was in here 2 weeks ago and put in, like I mentioned earlier, a petition with 150 signatures on it before this board. And like I said, I'd hope for some kind of update or anything where it's gone, to prohibit the health department from going door to door and trying to sell this poison. And Kevin, thank you for articulating in a better light things I'm not as good at. Appreciate you being here, and see the White Horse sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
And you've got, like I say, in that DVD, I would hope you gentlemen would watch. It's only a half hour long, but it's got a lot of technical information by a Dr. Kingston and a Dr. Well, his name's on the thing. And you'll be very enlightened. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address this board during the second public time?
Chairman, I apologize because I missed department head because I was dealing with something in the back. So just a couple things. One thing I did want to point out with Kevin, because I heard this all over our community, that I want to give kudos to, was if you saw any of the photos that were put out, got a lot of recognition, a lot of talk, which is what we need in this world right now. But Kevin put out, when our 13 Marines died, Kevin put out 13 cold beers in Lake Inn around the table and reserve that when people come in. I don't care what you say, that's awesome.
That's class.
So thank you for that, Kevin.
September 11th.
It was, we didn't hear a lot about that, of those people that have been fighting, and everything gets kind of moved around with it. And that should be headline. We should be talking to our kids about it. We should be talking about all the other things with it. And I just thought, because it was Kevin didn't even come up here and say anything about it, right? But in our community, it's sent a strong message to honor them. And it just made me very proud. Thank you, Kevin. The stats for the week: lodged in the jail 19, Imlay City 1, Lapeer City 2, Sheriff's Office 14, State Police 1, FOC 1. Out of those 19, 12 felony charges, 8 misdemeanors, 1 civil. Out of the 19, the 14 of them were male, 5 were female. Traffic stops 234, car crashes and accidents 21, personal injury accidents 4. Fortunately, no fatalities. Out of that 19, 2 needing medical treatment or intervention, 3 detoxing from drugs or alcohol, and 1 mental health intervention. I did want to touch, just because we ended with mental health intervention there, I want to thank Lauren. Lauren sent some of her people. We've been working with McLaren. I think we had a couple hiccups or speed bumps between the jail, CMH, and McLaren, and the behavioral psych ward side there. I think it's things I give the director a huge amount of credit at McLaren that handles the psychological behaviors on some of the things. Kind of feeds into what you've heard multiple people, and obviously with Connie and stuff talking about. But Lauren's people came in. They kind of took the lead along with our nurse on it. Danielle and Stephanie were there and just did a phenomenal job with it. And credit to McLaren, because they listened. They truly sat down and we were working through those. We got some follow-up meetings from there that I think are important to try to work through that part of, because it's really tough. I've sat up here too many times and talked about what percentage of our people in jail probably shouldn't be in jail. They should be somewhere and getting the mental health that they need. As a reminder, we did that back a little over a year ago. MSA, the Sheriff's Association, did a study to see basically what we felt the lodge, this was just in jails, not in prison, what percentage had severe mental health issues that were in local jails. Across the board, it was about 70%. 71% was Lapeer County. Truly think about that, that's crazy. So I give Lauren and his staff, I couldn't, obviously Lauren and I work together really well, but Daniel and Stephanie are just absolute rock stars. So I think that's a big part of the things that we talk about. We'll have some more conversations. I appreciate even with the kind aspect of it. I'm going to be putting together, I'm hoping to have all the results in at the beginning of October is what the Youth Advisory Council, the group through Community Foundation. I will have a full presentation for you that I'll also be doing like I did before, where I go to all of our school districts and present to every kid to get stand in front of every classroom to show them, especially with the mental health, that not only the pandemic, but especially the pandemic has added to our kids and the people out there. We need everybody and anybody to help with our kids right now. And I sat through, I had a long talk with Kathy last week about some of these things we're talking about. I see the adults screaming and hollering and back and forth, but the most important piece of that puzzle is our kids. And a lot of them don't have a voice. So I respect, obviously, the things that you do, Cheryl. I think we need everybody, every program. I commend you on approving that with her today. Because you talked about, Brendan hit it right on the head, is counselors aren't counselors in our schools. And the problem is their numbers of what it is per capita to each counselor would make you want to cry because of what they do. They can't. So all these other aspects of it, liaison got brought up. And fortunately, because of me coaching for so long here, I couldn't tell you just over the last few months how many times in the middle of the night I've went and taken kids out of houses that have stayed at my house, or kids that I've coached, people that I've got in rehab, the people that I've sat and gotten into counseling. I'm not talking 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm talking huge numbers, just because of the people that are comfortable with me to call me direct. And these are people that, to be honest with you, we walk amongst every day and have no idea what they're struggling with. And that's what a lot of times I tell my kids, especially being back in school, you have no idea what that child next to you is dealing with. Just to see in the hallways and stuff. I was at Lapeer schools yesterday talking to AJ, actually a school liaison officer for there, and we had a deep conversation about it. Just in this last 6 days, 7 days of school, some of the issues that they've had to deal with, it's zero related to school topics. It's to deal with home topics and what they've been dealing with. So I will have that presentation. That is my focus for the school year, is to be in those schools and nonstop, and to trying to get the help the things like the Cheryl and the school liaison and mental health that everybody's working with. I think that really has to be our focus, because I don't think we look at the traumatic side of it is. I'm going to throw a stat at you. The problem is it's not definitive yet because the focus isn't done. The Youth Advisory Council, if you don't know, are made up of kids from all of our school districts, all the way down to 6th grade. My daughter is one of them from Denver, an 8th grader. But they're from every school district from 6th to 12th grade. They're part of the Community Foundation. I sit on the Community Foundation. I didn't know much about it when I first came in, but I went to one of their meetings to see. They run their meetings exactly like you do. They run their budgets. It's so impressive to see these young kids doing the things that they do. It's heartwarming. But basically, from some of that money we have that is given to TIAC for them to invest in school projects and every one of our schools, every one of our districts. One of the biggest things they do is they do surveys in all of our school districts for 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. They send them out. They're anonymous. I've used these before. Some of you saw in my last ones, North Branch was one of the big impact ones that we had. I used all their information when I went and spoke to all these kids about social media, drugs, alcohol, all the other things with it. They send them out to, they're anonymous. They then take all of them back and they compile the stats to kind of show where we're at mentally. Some of the things, the issues and the red flags that are happening in our community and our schools. This year we really wanted to, because of COVID, we really wanted to focus on mental health. We really wanted to focus on all of those aspects of giving them that voice so that we knew in what ways can we kind of look at some of these new areas. Jennifer Phillips is the one that runs all of that for the Youth Advisory Council. So we were on a Community Foundation meeting here about 3 weeks ago, and all of the stats have been in Lapeer schools was the last one we come in. We had every other school district, and they were putting those all together. And Jennifer asked me at the end, she goes, can you stay on the Zoom meeting, and I need to talk to you after. I'm like, yeah, no problem. So we get done, and I said, what's going on? And Jen's, I could tell she was gonna start crying. She had tears in her eyes, and I'm like, what's going on? She said, Scott, I've compiled the stats, or the survey from 4 of our districts, because Lapeer was just coming in at that time. And one of the questions in there, 7th graders, 9th graders, 11th graders, was, in the last year, have you thought about committing suicide or harming yourself? She said at that point in our 4 school districts, the number was over 50%. Wow. She thinks it's about 54 to 55%. She said she had one school over 70%. Now, the problem is those numbers are coming in, so they could change before my presentation, as in a little bit. They're not gonna change drastically, but I about fell out of my chair. So that's my focus. And that's the things that we're doing when we talk about all these things. And so it gives, I'm not big to get up here and scream and holler on either side of what it is. The kids are my focus, our families and communities. Lastly, because I know I'm always long-winded, so I apologize. I wanted to just give you a heads up, because I talked to Clinton this morning, is next week, I'm gonna put on the agenda a discussion. And I wanted, when you see it, to understand, and it kind of went from our conversation the other day. But we talked about how we're in a little bit of, we're backed into a corner right now in law enforcement. I know I came, thank you, Commissioner Miller, for getting us on the personnel last time. And if you don't know, for the ones that weren't on personnel, I got stuck because I had a resignation to go to another department. And I had somebody that was coming in, and Brendan was kind enough to put it on there quickly. That was last month. I've lost 3 more. One, getting out of law enforcement completely because of the environment, and 2 that have moved on to other areas. And the problem is, they got families, they're young kids. We get it, not saying any of that part of it. One of the biggest things I want to say to you is, I want you, when I put that on, that this is a discussion and some ideas I think that we have to start having conversations about, as in to try to change that environment, that hiring environment, the retention side of it is. Now, as soon as I say that in any forum, people automatically go money, right? So that obviously is a big piece of that conversation. I want to publicly, in front of you, because I've been here 4.5 years, I want to commend each and every one of you for even looking at and the RFP and drawing all that stuff up on the wage study to show that we know there's a problem and we need to fix some of these things. Now, I understand there's other questions that come up with that, but personally, as Scott, I want to say thank you for looking at that. Thank you for moving forward with that, so that we can then make there's some hard decisions to be made, even with the answers of that, correct? But it gives us the opportunity, the information that we need to make an educated decision as to how we move forward from here. And then there's some other things that I want to present as into some new ideas that I think that we can try to bring future deputies here. Right now now with these 3 here, I have 4 open deputy spots. I have 2 that are injured, that are off. So I'm down 6. I don't have 1 single person on my hiring list. We bring them in, they don't qualify. And that's the problem is when we talk about this, and I've sat in front of you before and said, other departments outside of us have been dealing with this for almost 2 years, probably 2 years longer than 2 years. What saves us all the time is we focus on trying to hire from within the peer community, and that will never change. And some of the ideas that I'm going to present to you next week is ways of trying to get to our youth, our people here that are focused or would like to be involved in criminal justice, and get people in our community working for the sheriff's office. Some of the different ways in there, but I just want to have that discussion next week. I didn't want you to be blindsided by it when it's on the agenda. That's all it is. It's a discussion because I want your input. I like your ideas. Obviously, we have the law enforcement aspect of it. I think as a group, we can come up with some of these ideas to promote. We know the problem that we're in. I want to find a way to where we can fix that problem with people from right here in our community. So that'll be on the agenda next week. I just didn't want you to get blindsided when you saw it. So unless you have any questions.
I do appreciate you recognizing the mental health of what's going on and the children. One thing I like to do is to call on all families and parents to start protecting your children and don't allow them to use. I know that media is there, but try to get them away from TV, get them away from all this stuff. You've heard numbers that they're not even real, and as far as kids dying. So they're living in fear, and their numbers are high. It's not just children, and you and I talked about, we talked about this like a year and a half ago, that this is going to happen. It's not over. It's gonna get worse. And the more we keep playing this game that they have on us, the worse it's gonna get, but I appreciate that we're gonna be discussing that and move forward. I also appreciate the new CEO with McLaren on the front page. I was gonna bring it here the other day. He's encouraging people. This is what the situation is, encouraging people to, if you're sick, go to the hospital. They got you so much fear that you're gonna die from COVID that you're not even going. You got a heart problem, you got other cancer, get taken care of. Take care of yourself. Everybody has to take care of yourself. All this is all part of that same equation. People think, Rick, you're out of whack. No, all of this is coming around COVID. This whole country is destroyed around COVID.
I think the interesting, and I'm sorry to
Could I interject something here? Has everybody done speaking to us during public time? Because we're kind of straying off of what we do in public time here, and that's fine. Sure. But I mean, if we're done with public time, I'll close public time. You can proceed, share what you're talking about.
I'm wrapped up with what I had to say.
But I just want.
And you will be the first, when I put that program, I think it's gonna be very interesting to see what these surveys say. I mean, we obviously as adults get caught up in so sideways and some of the things we think, but to hear from the kids and what they're dealing with. My plan would be is once this presentation is put together, if the first one that'll be presented to is you, because you have with your constituents and people talking. Then I want to head each school board after that so that they see it and then get into the classroom. So, thank you for your time. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, one question. School liaison officers, with all the different school systems in Lapeer County, are most school systems using a school liaison officer?
Yeah, yes. Lapeer County is a little bit different. So Lapeer schools have the most school liaison, as in where it's the bigger district. So we have one in the high school. They had one in Rowan Warner, but there was a retirement, so they had to move out, but they're putting somebody in there, which would be the younger school. The sheriff's department has one in Zemmer, which is 8th and 9th graders. So we have two, but they're replacing them. Pierce City's putting someone in there. The other ones are kind of, Elmont has and she's a rock star, does a great job with it. She's kind of a part-time, she's brought in for the school. She's an officer and everything else, does a great job. Emily City has a full-time spot in it. Dryden doesn't, they use a part-time, actually it's one of our retired deputies that does some of it, kind of on a part-time stuff. So we're pretty blessed here in the county that we have, but a lot of them are just, they'll have one for the district itself, not one for the high school, the middle school, and the elementary. Usually it's one. And they work really, the one thing we really push, and I give credit to Chief Frisch and I work very closely on that, is just like yesterday, I was down dealing with something at the high school, and the two of the city officers were down there, and our school liaison were down there. So even though they're from different departments, they're all part of the same family. So if Josh Vander is our one at Zemmer, if Josh needs additional help, then they would come there. It kind of goes back to even when we had the situation in Zemmer, back when I first came in with the threat and the school shooting and all that other stuff. We really looked at it and kind of reevaluated it after that to say, okay, how can we get better from here? So it's kind of fluent. It's even though they're in different schools and they work for different departments, when an issue happens somewhere, we can have 3 school liaison officers immediately, and you could ultimately pull from Emily and Elmont to come additionally help. So that doesn't happen. I know I've said that a million times, but in Lapeer County, we're really blessed because all the chiefs, all the departments work really well together. But it's a huge piece to the puzzle. I say it probably every conversation I'm in. I truly believe the most important person in a police department is your school liaison, especially in today's day and age. It's a huge deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
But we have no closed session today, right?
Correct.
Well, then I need another motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Kevin.